That sucks we don't have that player on tonight. But that's
Hook Knight position. He's got it in a foul. Finds Wiggins ahead, but he did not see Gaffney, who pumps it free. Cole, the drive, the bank, no. Tip-in goes down for Whaley. The 10 seed.
Great way to start the show, guys. Herbie, you're muted. George, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the program. I'm Chris Heidel, along with George Becerra's on my upper right, and on our bottom is Euan McCreef, who is the only Yukon Husky fan here in the great state of the lower 48. So he's showing his muscles and his pythons. So it is March 24th, March 24th, 2021. Welcome to the Uski and Herbie show. It's all about the madness here. This episode. Thanks for joining us here, folks. Guys, what do you think about the madness so far? A lot of upsets. We had Loyola Chicago, who a couple of years ago made a run to the Final Four, and basically was ready to. And then they're back in the final, in the Sweet 16. What else? Who else you saw? Abilene Christian. Yeah, they're in the Sweet 16, and even another team, Oral Roberts, who haven't won one since 1977.
Oh, man, it's been absolutely phenomenal. We were talking before we came on air, and this is exactly what the tournament is about. These players who go to smaller schools, who don't get any of the recognition, who don't get any time on ESPN or any of the major networks, it's their time to shine. I mean, you could argue of those three teams, Herb, that Oral Roberts has had the toughest path to get to the Sweet 16. George, your thoughts?
And they got the roughest path still to go if they're going to get to the Final Four. So, you go from first. I was first in my brackets in my pool at work. I dropped from first place on the first day to the last day. I believe it was Sunday or Monday. I dropped to 12. Brackets on fire.
Wow.
Anybody can win. Yeah. Anybody can win this year.
No doubt.
Yes,
and I think also too, George, I'd like to get your thoughts on. I have this feeling that besides Gonzaga and Baylor, that these seeds or these teams are a little bit more vulnerable because they haven't played an entire schedule. Because maybe they're, I wouldn't say rust, but certainly it could affect the continuity of a team that had so many cancellations due to COVID, and maybe that has opened up. But I mean, I don't want to take away from any of the Cinderella teams. This is what the tournament's all about. This is what makes it the best and greatest thing in sports.
And this is why it will not work in football, so don't even talk about it.
Herbie, who are you most impressed with of the Cinderellas?
I'm very impressed by all these little small schools, like Loyola Chicago. And I had to ask my brother today what conference they play in. They play in the Missouri Valley Conference. I butchered that on the teleconference call this morning because I thought they were in some MEAC or whatever by accident. So some reporters said, I guess he needs to know his geography. Sorry, I'm in the ACC. Okay, we don't play small schools until the November, December. But anyway, well, Chicago and Oral Roberts and even Ohio, who basically, if you think of the state of Ohio, you think what? Ohio State, right? You don't think of Ohio University or any other school. And they told Virginia, bye, get out of here. Yeah.
Right.
So,
well, guys, let me touch on before we go.
Go ahead.
Sorry, Herbie. I wanted to just touch on the clip that you I was very disappointed, obviously, in the effort and execution by the Huskies. They had their opportunities. I mean, when you shoot 40% from the free throw line and just over 30% from the field, and you still have a chance, with 5 minutes left to go, you got to feel pretty good. But we just never turned that corner. And, credit to Maryland's defense. They held James Bouknight, who, might declare for the NBA, to 15 points. But then, you turn around, George, and the next round, Alabama drops 96 on them. So, I don't really know if it was an off night, but that's the beauty, George. If you have an off night, you go home.
Well, I wanted to first give some love to North Texas. We talked about a couple of the other lower seeds.
Sure.
But North Texas beating Purdue is huge.
Right.
Okay? Especially Purdue playing here in Indiana. So,
right.
But I got to be honest with you, Euan. The biggest thing about these games are your points that people need to make when they're at the free throw line. Those are the make or break. Those are gimmies. And when you look at some of these games and, that you're seeing coming down to being nail biters and all this other stuff, if they make their foul shots, it's a non-question. They can win the game right out. But missing those, as they call it, the charity stripe, you're not going to win.
Right.
George,
I totally agree with that.
The game within the game.
Yeah. And I agree with you, George. I was talking to Mark Turgeon after the UConn game. I said, Coach, you were 71% from the free throw line during this game. During the regular season, you were atrocious team-wise at the three-point line. And he actually looked at me and smiled and goes, yeah, we were bad. Last time we played at Mackey Arena, Darren Morsell missed two free throws at the last minute of the game. They lost by 2 on Christmas Day to Purdue. But, that was a bad taste in his mouth of the whole season. So he was glad that he got his revenge there. And I'm like, that's cool. And I even asked a couple, I was part of some of the post game, and I talked to Isaiah Wiley, they're from UConn, and I asked them, what did they do? What did they do in the second half differently? Because UConn was actually in the game at the end of the first half until but in the middle of the second half, around the 5-minute mark, they were only down by 3. That's a typical Maryland team letting people back in the ballgame. This is what we see here in the state of Maryland. Maryland basketball needs to take a page from the women's team because they need to blow people out. Just blow them out. Don't let them stay around for 10 minutes left in the second half or 5 minutes left in the game, because that's where you get yourself panicking and then you forget how you miss free throws or you throw up prayers and bricks and everything else. So let me play my clip that we had a chance to talk to one of the UConn gentleman here, Isaiah, and this is what he had to say after the game.
We're now joined by Isaiah Whaley, and we'll begin the press conference. Again, use the raise hand function to indicate you have a question. Our first question goes to Christopher Heidel. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hey, Isaiah. Sorry for the tough loss tonight against Maryland. What did you see? You guys came in the second half. Seemed like you guys were playing a little bit better. What did you guys see in the second half to get yourself, in the ballgame? You're in there by 5 minutes to go.
We were just trying our hardest to just keep doing what we do by offensive rebounding and trying to play our hardest on defense. And credit to them, they was making a lot of shots. So we were just trying to get more involved offensively and trying not to settle. So, but credit to them as well, though.
Yeah, so that's what, yes, they're all depressed there after the game because they were there. They had a chance to win it. UConn had a chance to pull it out, but Maryland, didn't have any big men in the middle. So that's why you saw on Sunday night when Alabama just blew Maryland out of the farmhouse in Indiana.
Yeah, you know what? And that's one of the reasons why I like Alabama going forward. I mean, when you talk about teams George, when I watch Gonzaga, I think it's an NBA team. Everyone can score. And I like Alabama because not only do they have the scores, but they can grind out a game in the 60s. They are so athletic. And quite frankly, they shoot lights out, George. And I mean, if you had to pick an underdog, I just think athletically, what they've shown so far, and even throughout the whole season, they get up and down. They force teams to play at their pace, not vice versa.
Well, I can tell you the one thing that's going to hurt Gonzaga is the way that their season played out coming into the March Madness activities. It's they've had a fairly good run all this season and haven't had much adversity. I would prefer the team to have some adversity coming into March Madness, and instead of having that easy road, because you dig deep and you learn from those tough games. But right now, I mean, up till now, Gonzaga's had a pretty easy go of it.
I agree with you. And Gonzaga's only last against BYU. BYU gave them a run in the Western Conference Final. Because BYU came back, they were down by 12 or something like that. So that's the only time they've been playing catch up, because that was just a couple of weeks ago. Like you said, they didn't have a game that they got slaughtered. They slaughtered Virginia, they slaughtered Iowa, they slaughtered who else in there? They didn't play Baylor, so if they play Baylor, that's going to be a game for people to tune into, because that was supposed to be played December 2nd in Texas, but it got canceled because of COVID-19.
Yeah, and you know what? George brings up a good point about, not being battle tested. And I think that's one of the things that I just love about the tournament. These small schools, you earn the right to play in this tournament. You're not given the right. So, no, yes, there have been a couple of blowouts, but, for the most part, these small schools, the moment hasn't been too big for them. They've come in with some moxie, especially the teams that we talked about. I mean, Oral Roberts. I mean, are you kidding me? This team. I cannot wait to talk to the reporter later that we have on this show about this team, and if he in fact saw this coming, because they have just been playing so well, and the continuity and the unselfishness. And it has just been awesome to see. We are in for a great weekend of basketball, gentlemen.
Well,
exactly.
Let me tell you that
you don't realize. Yeah, go ahead, George.
I was just going to say, with Oral Roberts, you can hear in these coaches' pre-games discussion, and it's like we've talked in the past weeks. Be true to yourself, play your game, and just score more points. And that's what these teams are doing. It's like you said, Euan, they're not letting the game get too big for them. They're keeping true to themselves and playing their game.
Right. And I agree with you. And here's the other fact. Oral Roberts did play against Arkansas this year on December 20th, only lost by 10. So, they could knock off Arkansas and be in the Elite Eight by the end of the weekend, because they already played them. And I asked, Arkansas today, like one of the players, I was going to get anything in time to edit it, but I asked him, like, you guys played them back in December 20th. What do they look differently now than they played back in December 20th? And the guy goes, there's just their 3-point shooting is better, and their ball, the offense is a lot more clicking on all cylinders, and they're dangerous.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, George. So many times, I ask coaches, what do you have to do differently, to play with this team? Or the simple fact of the matter is you dance with the girl. What? Here I go again. You can't change who you are. You just have to, maybe some minor adjustments and those things. But what else, George? We talk about these teams and these programs. What about these coaches? What about these coaches, and to be able to go into a high-end recruit, a 4- or 5-star recruit, and be like, hey, did you see what we did last year? I mean, we may not be on, ESPN or Fox Sports, but, at the end of the day, making the tournament, that's how you're judged. You can be regular season champs, you could be ACC champs, but how far did you go in the tournament? That's what people remember.
Well, why do you think it's everybody else in Gonzaga this year? Gonzaga at one time was that Cinderella team, right? And all of a sudden the culture shifted when they started getting further and further into the tournament, right? And now they're the top of the summit. Right now, they're the it team in NCAA men's basketball. So, it's a testament to what you're saying, is because you don't get good like that overnight. It's a process over time, and eventually, that small school is going to go toe to toe with the big school.
Right. And I remember Gonzaga coming out, 1998, and we were like, who's Gonzaga? And then they had that run
Adam
in the NCAA
Morrison?
tournament that year. Yeah, the Morrison was the only guy I knew. But, like 1998, it's like, wow, they made a run in the Elite Eight. I think they beat Florida in the Sweet 16. And I think they almost got to UConn or something like that. I think UConn was in there somewhere. I can't remember. But, and then now Gonzaga, it's like with the words of Duke and Kentucky and all those people. It's not now they're part of the blue blood, the Power 5 team now. It's like, and they have a small arena. They're building a brand new arena for them for next year, and the kennel is going to be a little bit bigger than before. But that's basketball out there in Spokane, Washington. It's not like it's we're in Durham, North Carolina.
Yeah, well, you know what, Herbie? I mean, obviously covering the ACC for so long. I mean, we talked about the regular season. How disappointing has the ACC conference been? The traditional top dogs are anything but that now, and we've seen that play out through even the first round of the tournament. George, the competitiveness and the execution has not been there the entire year.
And when was the last time you heard of a Duke basketball player going into the transfer portal?
Interesting.
Never.
Yes.
And it happened, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I mean,
you can only be the king for so long, and then there's going to be a reset button. It's like everything else. Right. Eventually, a time where reset's going to happen.
Right. Hold on. No, Coach K, I do not want to play golf tomorrow. I don't have the money for it. If you want to call me, that'd be a good idea. Yes, I'll see you next October. Yeah. Okay.
Ouch,
have a great summer, Mr. K, Coach K. No, that's what he's doing right now. He's probably playing golf right now, or yelling at his kids, or yelling at his players, or because they got tested for positive in the ACC tournament. And somebody said to me the other day, like, if they didn't get that positive test, they could have played Georgia Tech in the final.
Right. Well, coulda, shoulda. This year has been anything but a traditional year all the way around, guys. But the best thing is we have so much in front of us, guys. What are going to be the storylines on Monday after 4 great nights of basketball? What Cinderella team has the best chance of moving forward? And I mean, for me, it's Oral Roberts. I mean, they have interior big men. They have the outside shooting. They have the speed. They have it all. And quite frankly, their confidence, George, has to be soaring through the roof right now.
I know we talked earlier about where my pick was going, but I don't want to be the team playing Oral Roberts right now.
Right.
Because it's called fire. They're on fire. As they say in NASCAR, cautions breed cautions, right? But winning basketball games like this breeds confidence.
No question. And it also helps, I mean, what do we always talk about? Recruiting. Get the best players that you can get. And even if they don't go any further, George, I mean, a long way to go. And, you don't want to ever settle, but knocking off 2 behemoths, basically, it allows for easier recruiting.
It opens up doors.
Yeah. Right.
And there's a guy on Oral Roberts you may want to put a circle around because I don't know if he's going to be a senior or if he's a junior. Kevin Bandor, he had 28 points against the Gators, and that's all in the second half. So, I don't know if he's going to be a high draft pick in the NBA, but you might see him one day in Charlotte or wherever you buy your tickets to watch the NBA. And, 28 points against a Gator team. I know the Gators weren't like, the 1976 Indiana Hoosiers, with the defense and all that stuff, but that's pretty good for against a Power 5 team, putting up 28 points against that defense.
Oh, absolutely. But we could even talk about Ohio State. I mean, goodness gracious. I mean, it's just, this is what the tournament's all about. You cannot have an off night. And let's also say this, guys, I'm really disappointed in Virginia. They've obviously been on both sides of it, getting knocked out by having the biggest upset in tournament history against them, then winning, and then they just don't seem to be able to get over the hump. I mean, they grind it out, they play good defense, but at the end of the day, George, you got to put the ball in the bucket.
It's about having ups and balls going through the wicket. It's all it is. It's about ups and wickets. Ups and wickets.
Exactly. Exactly. Another question for you folks tonight. What do you think about this whole bubble thing this year in Indianapolis and San Antonio? I think it's great for both programs because I know the women's program, the women's down in San Antonio, they had an issue with the barbell and the weight room situation. I don't understand why. People forget that we're all human and they need the same as we do. Some iron, during the the workout. It's great, but don't leave like one barbell and one, like that was just pretty bad on the NCAA side of that, and they're playing damage control, but they're doing great down in San Antonio. They have no issues, and same thing in Indianapolis, except for VCU giving Oregon the win the other night because of the positive test. I think these bubble things, they need to do it again next year. Move it to a different place. So look at the scenario. You go to a bubble. You have 3 weeks in a nice place. Or do you want to travel from, if you play in the Western Conference, the Western region, go all the way out to California and go all the way to California, then go back across the East Coast? And some of the players and coaches, they don't, that travel takes a toll on their education, their everything else. I think they need to stay in one place to get them all focused, and I feel like they're focusing better.
So, Kris, don't get me going on the women's basketball NCAA tournament versus the men's, because I could spend a whole show on that, and I'm actually feeling inspired to write about this, okay? Because I know it's outside of what I normally write about, but I feel inspired to write something about that. But we had a guest on early in the season. I can't remember her name from ESPN, but she had been suggesting of the bubble site for years now about having the women's tournament at a bubble site. And
it was Debbie.
George, elaborate a little bit. I'm curious. What are you inspired to write about?
I'm inspired to write about that. I've been saying for years about the difference between the women's tournament and the men's tournament. It's all superficial. I've always said for the longest time is, why in the men's regional games, first 2 rounds, do they get a special floor to play on? And when the women's regionals first 2 rounds, when they play at those universities, they just use the home team's court. It should be the same across both platforms. People say it's about revenue. I don't think it's about revenue. If it's a revenue problem, then you talk about building the revenue and you try to do something better so you create revenue. So it's a smart business model is you don't treat one different than the other, because you get into the situation of where it's social activity that's blending with sports. And that's where, unfortunately, a lot of this year has been spent, right? It's about social injustice, equality, right? And the one place that, regardless, they're college kids. It doesn't make a difference if they're male or female. They deserve the same attention. They deserve the same amount of exposure. You deserve to have the same type of court that the men are using with the March Madness. This year's different because I think down in San Antonio they have the floor, but I think in the other regions they're not doing that for the women's game. They're not having a special floor. So to me, I think there's got to be a look into treating it as an equal. This is the year. It's 2021. Why aren't we treating people equally?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, George, I didn't even know that, and I don't know if it's. I mean, obviously, the men's game brings in 10 times as much money, but it shouldn't be about that. Yeah, I never knew that. So the women, when they start out in the first 2 rounds, just play at a university site as opposed to the men's, who has the March Madness logo on it, and they'll have a region, kind of Well, I think they do play at or the regional centers, or just different venues. Is that what you're saying, George?
But I'm just saying, I mean, it's all about the floor, right? You want to advertise your brand, right? If the NCAA is
Oh, I
the
see.
brand, right? You want people to know that they're playing an NCAA tournament. You don't. I mean, I'll be honest with you. When I covered the first 2 rounds 2 years in a row at Notre Dame, and it was the Shamrock on the floor. But you see other men's tournaments going on. Is they got the first 2 rounds and they got a nice fancy logo, March Madness, on the court. You couldn't tell what university they were possibly playing at. So to me,
Yeah, I agree
I
with
think
you.
you got to treat people the
Yeah.
same.
Yeah. I agree. I think they need to be. I think it has to be equal in every the whole, men and women. And I think it's great they're in San Antonio and the names. Okay, for the regions, the women are using names from San Antonio. Like you got Riverwalk, you got something else, and you got I don't know. In the men's tournament, it's like we got the Midwest region. Hello,
Right.
you are in the Midwest already. Okay, you don't need to say Midwest. They should have came up with. This is what I think they should have came up with. You're in the state of Indiana. You should have the Bob Irsay division. You should have, you should have the Andrew Luck the region. You should have the Peyton Manning region, and you should have um, somebody like Reggie Miller region. You know, and just like, hey, in the Reggie Miller region, you got Ohio State taking on this guy. I think that would be funnier, more exciting. Instead of we're in the Eastern region here, and you're only in Indiana. They're not going anywhere. They're still in the same place.
I think, guys, it's 2021. I won't get into the politics of it, but equality. If you're talking about it's a revenue thing, what's a way you increase your revenue? You make the product better. Plain and simple. Treat them the same way you treat the men.
Well, I'll say this, George, that women's basketball has come a long way, over the years, especially, with WNBA being pretty not very successful, but successful enough to stay around, to have a draft, to develop a fan base. So before we go any further, guys, let me give the rundown of who we're going to have on the show tonight, Herbie. 8 o'clock, Morgan Beard, the sports anchor and reporter who covers Oral Roberts. Then um, at 8:15, Kris Gardner, the Houston Roundball Review. Hey, we haven't even mentioned the Cougars. And speaking about not mentioning someone, George, how about those Oregon State Beavers? What's up? Kerry Eggers will be on at 8:25. We'll wrap the show with Bob Holt. It'll be a quick one, but George, I'm interested to hear what your question is because George likes the Razorbacks as a dark horse, and I love the pick. All right.
Woo pig soy.
Hold on a second. Hold on a second.
Oh, nice.
There's
Herbie. I
George's
love the
pick right
graphics.
there. And then,
Woo,
and then,
roll
and here's
tide.
Euan's pick. He wants Alabama. And I'm going to go with my, real quick. Leonard Hamilton, tough guy. Okay. Did you hear what happened to Leonard Hamilton from Florida State? He blew his Achilles out. I don't think it's during a practice during the week. He rolls in with a boot on, and they asked him the other day in the press conference, like, why do you want to use that little cart? He goes, I don't need a cart. I'll just walk around with a boot on. That is a tough guy. TG,
Sick.
tough guy. Why do you need a little foot? Yeah, I'm like, you want more respect for me and Coach Leonard for that one because who needs a dumb cart? Just walk around and just if you blow your Achilles tendon, just put some Band-Aids on it and walk out the door. You're okay. Yeah.
He just wants to keep his
anyway,
leg muscles equal. He just wants to keep his legs muscles equal with using the cart and pushing off on the other one.
Exactly. Well, it's top of the hour, 8 o'clock. Let's bring in our first guest. Thanks for joining us. The rest of the we've been on since 7:30. Morgan Beard, who is one of the reporters down there in Tuscaloosa. Not Tuscaloosa. I'm thinking Alabama right now. Tulsa, Oklahoma. Yeah. Jeez, you guys are giving me all the SEC right now. This guy's in the Big 12 country, but he covers Oral Roberts for down there in Tulsa, Alabama, and Tulsa, Oklahoma. So, Morgan, thanks for joining us. What is the vibe down there in your neck of the woods with Oral Roberts? Because I found out something. Oral Roberts is a religious school, right?
Yes. Yeah, they're the evangelical pastor, celebrity, Oral Roberts, back in the day, kind of founded everything. So, yeah, they're faith-based university, private school over here. So they're not the biggest. They're really based on academics as well. So the fact that a team like this small and this, I guess, in such a niche category is making it big in the tournament. But we've seen, Abilene Christian and these other schools that are similar make big runs. So it doesn't matter how small you are or what you believe in. If you can play basketball and you got some players, you can make some noise.
Yeah, absolutely. Morgan, thanks so much for joining us. It's not the size of the dog in the fight. It's the size of the heart. I don't know. How's that go, Morgan?
Something like that. Hey, I'm a small guy, so I should know that verbatim, but I know
right on. Morgan, let me ask you, it has been such a treat to watch this team play and, tackle the big boys. But I've only really watched them 2 games. I watched some highlights, and I'm like, hey, they're a good team. They play. You've seen every game. Could you have foreseen this coming? And was there a point maybe during the season when you're like, this team could be special?
Well, I feel like everyone's kind of overlooked their early out-of-conference schedule slate. So they played Arkansas already. They played Oklahoma State. They played Wichita State. They played OU. And all of the out-of-conference D1 teams they played made the tournament. And they had a 12-point lead on Arkansas at one point in the second half, early in the second half. They go on to lose by 11, but Max Abmas also had his lowest single-season game points-wise in a game that he played over 9 minutes because they played a local small school here. That didn't really count. And they only lost to Oklahoma State by single digits as well, and he was out-dueled by Cade Cunningham late in that game. So I feel like obviously the tournament puts a bigger bright light on the team, but all along, we should have kind of known, hey, this team can hang with the big boys. And then now in the tournament, they're showing that they could not only hang with them, but they're beating these prestigious powerhouse programs, Ohio State and Florida. And so now with this Arkansas matchup, people are kind of seeing, well, hey, they were 39% from three-point range all year long. That's kind of their MO. They chuck it up. They shoot a lot of threes. Everybody could shoot on this team. And they've been kind of under their average, even though they've beaten Ohio State and Florida and they've had these upsets. They can still get even better. So if they can get back to their average, near 40% from three-point line, and Arkansas doesn't really shoot it that much from the three-point line either, I'm not going to say, hey, look, they're going to roll on this one, they're going to win this one. But now the seeds don't matter. All the cliches and whatever you want to say, that doesn't matter right now. And they're a good team. And really what stands out to me, and I'm sure you guys have known watching the highlights that you have seen, Max Abmas, the nation's leading scorer. So to answer your question, when I think they started to kind of get a real publicity and people started really taking note of them was when early in the season, Kevin O'Banner and Abmas were the leading duo. And then just a couple weeks after that, Abmas became the leading scorer in the nation. And then, of course, after the Summit League Championship, they had a couple buzzer beaters kind of go their way, and they made Sports Center top plays. And then, hey, a couple weeks later, they have 2 upsets, and now they're the Cinderella of the tournament. So it's a crazy, wild ride. I don't think anyone can say, hey, we saw it coming, but now that they're there, they're a legitimate team.
So, Morgan, I'm glad you had a nice segue for me there about Abmas.
Yeah.
When the color commentary is talking about how you pronounce a guy's last name, they're like, this is seriously how you pronounce this. We understand it's not spelled that way, but this is how you pronounce it.
Yes.
It's a great icebreaker for conversation, right?
Well, what's funny is so they've been in this magical run, through the first 2 rounds already. And the NCAA, they just held the weekly press conference for ORU. So I got off of that about 2 hours ago. And the NCAA host, the lady that's moderating the event, she mispronounced his name. She said Max Abmas. And so Paul Mills, the head coach for ORU, literally had to go on before his press conference, before the Sweet 16 matchup, and remind people still how to say his name. So it's Max Abmas. It's a German name. You don't pronounce the B.
Yep.
Miss. And I made this cheesy joke in one of my stories this year on him. Hey, he's the ace in the offense. So just remember that. The ace, whatever, the wild card, ace missed. And maybe people will know his name after this next round. We'll see what happens. But he's a great player, man. This guy, they call him Midcourt Max. That's his nickname. And if you see some of these highlights, he literally is like Steph Curry light, what he was doing back in Dayton. He pulls up from anywhere on the court, and he really can make them. And I talked to head coach Paul Mills about it early in the year. He said he's over that queasy, nervous, like, why are you shooting it from half court? Why are you shooting it from the logo? Because the dude is money more often than not. So it's pretty remarkable to see this kind of talent kind of come to the national spotlight. People kind of catch on, even if they can't say his name yet.
Yeah. So Morgan, I'm sitting here and I'm watching this game, Ohio State, Oral Roberts. I put Ohio State on upset alert at halftime. And everyone was like, George, what are you doing? I'm like, no, I'm serious. Upset alert at halftime for Ohio State. And to see that game go to overtime, and as Euan was saying earlier, it's all about the fight in the dog, right? You have David versus Goliath, whatever cliche of the monster versus the small guy. That team, they've done things in the past, but something seems special about this team this year. Personally, I picked Arkansas to go past the next round. I wouldn't want to be Arkansas right now coming against number 15 seed Oral Roberts into this weekend.
Yeah, and that kind of goes to what I was saying. Like, of course, anyone after a Cinderella team, we saw Florida Gulf Coast a couple years ago. After any of these Cinderella teams win their first couple of games, you think immediately, okay, when's the ride going to end? When they're going to come back down to earth? So you think, hey, they got past 2, they got past 7. Now you got a 3 seed coming up. It's gonna end. They're gonna lose by 20 points. Yada 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 yada. But that kind of goes to my point I was making earlier. This team, now you got to really throw the seeds out. Another cliche. But when you look at the way their roster construction and what they do, yeah, they shoot a lot of threes. That's kind of what they do. But they're more than just, the nation's leading scorer in Max Asmus. They got Kevin O'Banner, who's scoring 29 points a game through the first 2 rounds. And this guy is second fiddle. No one wants to talk about him, but he's scoring nearly 30 points a game. And then even outside of them, even Asmus talked about it today. And it's cliche as it is for some, players to say it's 1 through 15, it's everybody on the team. But they've got this guy, Kareem Thompson. If you see him play, he's kind of the third man. And then it's really kind of hard to pick who really is a third guy, because then Francis Lotsis can step up. So really they have all these players that can shoot from anywhere. And then they play tough, gritty defense. And also, back on the offensive side, they don't turn the ball over at a high clip at all. So they take care of the ball, they can shoot, and they can force some turnovers. And then when you have 2, as of right now, dominant players, star players in the tournament, anything can happen. So, yeah, I understand people want to pick Arkansas because, you're going to get talk eventually. You got two bona fide scorers, and you got some gritty defense, and you got some solid role players. Hey, we'll see what happens.
Exactly. Hey, Morgan, last time Oral Roberts made a run was back in way before we were born, right? Back like in the late 70s, they made a big run, or 74, 75. Yeah, I thought we were even figments of people's imagination.
Yeah, and now everyone's kind of talking about that 74 team, and I think that was back then when they had less teams in the tournament. So really, I think the broadcast crew said this is the first time they've made the Sweet 16, technically in this format. So it's even more remarkable when you think that, because now you got more teams, less likely, yada, 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 yada. But actually, my coworker, my sports director, TJ, he caught up with the 74 members of the 74 team earlier. Yeah. So check Twitter and kind of catch up thoughts with the team. He's going to be posting that shortly. But it's taken over the town. I live in an apartment complex 5 minutes away from Oral Roberts. And then if you guys saw the images from the watch party in the gym that they play their games in, I was wondering why I was at the station doing highlights. I should have been there at the party, hanging out with all the students and everybody enjoying the game and whatnot. But it's kind of taken over the town. And you talk to all these students and stuff. I didn't have much school spirit. I'm here for academics and this and that. But as you'd expect, everyone's on board because it is kind of once in a generation, once every 30, 40 years type thing going on right now.
Morgan, we have some footage from earlier in the season, but what is the one thing that concerns you about this Razorback team that could potentially give Oral Roberts some problems?
Well, not to cop out so much, but I will say maybe what worries me because as I said, ORU likes to chuck it up deep from 3 a lot, is if ORU kind of goes cold, maybe even colder than they have, been, I guess, stats-wise the last few games, then Arkansas maybe can do some damage inside, of course. I mean, everyone likes to talk about how they like to spread it out. They have shooters all over the court. They're not the biggest team, obviously. When you talk about these mid-major teams, size is always a big factor when it comes to these Power 5 conferences. So it's the tried and true thing. Maybe Arkansas can kind of wear them down inside. There's this graph that I posted earlier they're two contrasting styles. So ORU shoots a lot more threes. They make them at a more efficient clip. Arkansas really doesn't like shooting threes very much. They're not very good from three-point range, but they're one of the best teams with two-point percentage-wise. So it can be the classic contrast of styles. You got small ORU wants to shoot you out the gym, and if they go cold, and then Arkansas, they're relying on those high percentage buckets, then you can kind of see the game get away from them very quickly. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. I mean, like I said, I'm not trying to beat a dead horse, but I think this has the makings of another classic game. Florida went down to the last second. Ohio State went down to the last second. So I think ORU, despite their small size and Cinderella story, I think they can give any team a run. So we'll see what can happen when it comes to Saturday.
That's true. Well, Morgan, thanks so much for coming on tonight. And you can follow him on, that's your Twitter handle, right? Morgan Beard, at
Yes,
Morgan
sir.
Beard, and you can see all the cool stuff going on. Back to that whole thing when you guys beat Florida, I thought that was a COVID situation. I was like, wow, that's a lot of people in one area. Yeah. Yeah, I was like, we're going to have a little, situation. But, but it's different these days. Back a couple of years ago, we don't care how many people are in this arena. Now, like, whoa. We got so many people in there. We got to calm it down. We might have an outbreak.
I won't give them credit. They're in the Navy Center. If you look at the tapes, hey, it looked like it was 100% mask rate there at the celebration party. So, hey, props to them for keeping it on. I know it'd be hard for me to want to celebrate, not rip it down and hug and kiss everybody around me. So, at least they were doing it safely, at least from our vantage point, right?
Well, you'll be there if they make it to the Final Four. You're probably going to be there with them and just party and you probably won't go to work for 2 weeks, probably, right?
Yeah, I got some sick days lined up. Don't tell anybody.
Nice,
See what happens. Yes, sir. Appreciate it.
All right, Morgan. Thank you, buddy. Have a great evening.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
All right. I see you. All right, folks. Let me remove him from the program. That's Morgan Beard, who covers Oral Roberts down there in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Yeah, that's where we were there this year. We had some people from the Golden Hurricane down there. Tulsa had a good player down there for football, so that's a good place for sports down there in Oklahoma. I want to go there, Euan. I think we need to go there because there's boots and ribs, right?
Oh, jeez, here we go.
And you know what else too? There's tornadoes out there. I want to do a little tornado chasing, Herbie. You got to get Nicole on a waiver. I can't be responsible.
Tulsa is.
Oh, you want to have her sign a waiver?
Yeah, have Nicole sign a waiver. What'd you say, George? Tulsa's flat.
Tulsa is just flat. I went out there for a bowling tournament, and I know that's right up Chris's alley.
No pun intended. Come on, you guys.
And I flew in a week after there was a tornado there. I was like, great, I'm going to Tulsa. There's a tornado there. And you can see why. There's just no mountains to break any resistance of anything coming through that area. You can see for miles. The horizon is just, you can see the horizon from any place in Oklahoma.
Wow.
That's pretty cool, George.
Is it the same thing in Indiana? Because I went to Indiana, South Bend up towards the north, it's okay, towards Michigan and all that stuff. But if you go down towards West Lafayette, it's fairly flat too, right?
There are portions of Indiana that are flat like that, yeah.
Yeah, because I have my buddy Matt, and he goes, he made a comment. He goes, "Is there mountains here?" I'm like, "No, that's a salt lick over there, dude. There's no mountains over here." I was like, "That's not a mountain. That's a salt lick." I'm like, "What do you think?" He's like, "Well, it's so flat here in Indiana." I'm like, "Yes, it's flat in Indiana. That's why Dorothy is not here right now. Okay, let's get going. Yeah, get on board." So, folks, it's 8:14 Eastern time. Thanks for joining us here on Uski and Herbie. Next week is day before opening day of Major League Baseball, so it's a good time of year for all of us because I know we are all fans of some team. I know I'm a fan of the New York Mets, and I know this guy down here who roots for the Huskies might change to "Let's go Yanks." Yeah,
Bronx Bombers. Let's have a little. Can we do a little preview next week, Herbie? What do we get? Has anything been predetermined for next week's show?
Nothing, but we could do Major League Baseball next week. We could talk Orioles, Nationals, Mets, Yanks, Devil Rays, or whatever the Rays they call them out there. And I know Euan's going to be a season ticket holder at the race when the Yanks are in town, because you can buy any ticket you want there in Tropicana Field.
Yeah, I know.
Giving them away.
Yeah, go ahead, George. Oh, they're giving
The Trop.
I know. George, I was there one time years ago when I lived in Tampa in the late 90s, and I said, wow, that nobody's here. You know, I feel more excitement at a tennis match, is what I thought to myself. But hey, you know, the Rays have come a long way, so it'll be great. I mean, obviously, we'll still have the tournament going on, but I wouldn't mind touching on a little baseball, Herbie.
Okay, I'll work on that this week. I'll try to see if I can get Botter or somebody from the Orioles and somebody from the Mets and Yankees to come on to talk National League, American League Baseball, because opening day was on a Thursday this year. So Easter weekend, they're going to have games, and they're letting fans in the ballpark. So that's going to be very interesting.
Yeah, it should be.
Bring
it is what I say too, George. And we're just waiting for Kris Gardner.
Well, he's right here. I'm letting pull him in, and there's Kris Gardner from the Houston. He does a good job with the Houston Cougars. So, Kris, thanks for joining us this afternoon, or evening, wherever you are. I'm all over the place today. It's been raining all day. It's been raining.
Okay.
I don't even know what time what day it is when it rains.
How you guys doing? Glad to be on. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, you're
thanks
welcome.
for being here,
Well,
Kris.
let's talk about
appreciate
Houston
it.
and Syracuse. Houston and Syracuse has never played each other before. Why in the world would happen there? They haven't never played each other in their history of their franchise. No, not the franchise. This is their first time this weekend. So, what do you think about Syracuse, and what do you think about Houston?
Syracuse, we all know you cover basketball, follow basketball for a long time. You know, Syracuse is famous for their zone defense, and their zone defense, 2-3 zone. Houston is not a great shooting team. They're not a first shot team, but they are just so relentless, crashing the offensive boards. So if they miss, their goal is to go get it. So if they shoot well, it's going to be a great ball game. But if they struggle, it's going to come down to how many rebounds that they can get.
Yeah, Kris, the Syracuse shot 45% in their win against West Virginia. What's going to be the key for this Cougar team to shut down the three-point line?
Just being the usual defensive selves. That's their identity, defense and rebounding. I mean, plus they need to limit their turnovers. Syracuse has a less turnovers than their opponents by, I think, 2 per game. UVA doesn't turn over the ball a lot, but they have struggled against zone defenses. They have struggled against pressure defenses, full court, things like that. But their key, they got to defend Buddy Boeheim. They got to match up well with him. I'll be kind of curious to see which of the Cougars will be the primary defender on Buddy, because if it's Dejan DeRoe, we'll see if Dejan's hip is healthy enough for him to guard Buddy and allow him to get around those screens, because, if you got a bad hip pointer, when they're touching those screens, it's going to be a problem. It's going to be difficult for him to defend Buddy like that. And plus, Buddy has deep range. So that'll be a key as well for Houston to just match up defensively and guard at the three-point line.
So, Kris, I'm a stats guy, okay? When I look at the game, when I do my reviews and I write my articles, the first thing that I go back and look at is the offensive rebounds, defensive rebounds, and most importantly, the free throw. Because to me, all of that is the game within the game. If you shoot the rock, you got to have folks there to pick up the mess and tear it down from the glass and put it back up. If you're not rebounding offensively, the defense is going to take that ball, and now the defense needs to do something with it at the opposite end. To me, I think the biggest problem with college basketball is the fact that people take the shot and half the team's already bolted down the court. What are your thoughts?
And that's an interesting point, because one thing Houston does, they send 4 guys to the glass. So that is really one key in why they rebound so well offensively is they send 4 players to the glass. Very few teams do that. So they don't run back. They get the ball, and they either get it back and put it back in, or they tip it out to a teammate to reset the offense and then try to grind you down some more. So that's a good point.
That's true. I agree with that point too. Yeah, I agree, George. I think you see Houston plays a whole different type of style because Coach Sampson used to play this style in Indiana. So he did really well in Indiana, and then he went off to the NBA for a couple of years. I think he played. I think he was with Atlanta or something like that, or an assistant coach or something like that. He had that situation with the cell phone and could call anybody or anything. But I think he actually is enjoying this team more than he. I was listening to him this afternoon on the teleconference call, and it seems like he's enjoying the kids this year than the teams a couple of years ago that won conference championships and all that stuff.
This team is different. It's special, and I think all of us have had to deal with the COVID part of it. And they had COVID. Their whole team had COVID in December, so they were one of the first teams in the conference and really in the country to be impacted. The entire team. So they got over it back in December, and then they were kind of done with it. But they've been through a lot this year. It's a special team. Dejan Duro has been through a lot in his time at U of H, and if you folks remember last season, he was the guy who bit Cincinnati player. So, that made all the highlights in SportsCenter, and he was that guy, the biter. But this year, his senior year, he's bounced back, had a very good senior season. He's played really, really well the last month or so. He and Quinn Grimes have taken their games up another level since February. And one issue for them is 2 of the 3 key guards, Duro, Grimes, and Sasser, have played well. Very rarely have all 3 played well in the same game. If all 3 play well against Syracuse, that'll be a huge, huge plus.
Kris, when I was watching the first couple of rounds with Syracuse, there came a point in time where I was like, let somebody other than Buddy beat you. What do you think the defensive philosophy? Maybe I don't even know because he's not a post player. It's rare that we say this about a 3-point shooter because I would have said maybe we do a box and one, maybe we can crash the zone. How do you think that we could potentially see some double teams beyond the arc? And how would you defend Buddy, who's been just so prolific the first 2 games of the tournament?
I agree with you. I think you really have to make the other players beat you. And that's one of the things about superstars or the key go-to option. You need to take that option as best you can and make the other 4 players beat you. And if they do, then you tip your hat.
Right.
Good job, and you go on. But if they don't, you're going to win.
Nice.
So, Kris, going back to the stats, what is the magical elixir for Houston? Where do they have to be at a game to solidify a victory? What are the magic numbers for shooting do they got to be at that typically culminates in a Houston victory?
If they shoot probably 43% plus, for them, that's really good. If they make double-digit threes, they're going to win. There have been games this season when they've got hot from 3 because their defense is constant. If their offense and 3-point shooting is rolling, very few teams can beat them. So I think shooting 43+% from the floor will be a key. And then, I am a UH alum too, but I follow Houston for my whole life. But it's in the water here about missing free throws. It's like Houston Cougar legacy that they miss free throws. So, going back to Elvin Hayes in the 60s, missed free throws that cost them wins. But this team, for the most part, have shot free throws surprisingly well. So I'm afraid that bugaboo will bite them in the butt sometime this tournament, and we'll see if that's Saturday.
Yeah. Real quick, let's talk about Justin Gorham, who we tried to get him on the program tonight, but they have a team function going on right now out there in Indianapolis. But he was on the teleconference call. We'll get him on hopefully next week, whatever, if they make it to the Final Four or what we can do. This is a kid from Columbia, Maryland, who basically was sitting on the bench at Pat Scarry at Towson and transfers to Houston and now he's an impact player. So I want to know what is going on with Towson University, because they need to, they had some good players and then just let them go in the transfer portal or whatever. And, and now, Justin is actually, I think, the only guy in Maryland still in the NCAA tournament. Besides, there's no state, no Maryland Terrapins.
Well, you really got to ask. That's a great question. We've never really asked him why he chose to leave Towson to come to Houston. But, he listed the coaches and they recruited him to come here. And interestingly enough, when he transferred to Houston, Kelvin Sampson told us during Justin's sit-out season, the transfer season, that he was his ideal foreman. But the reason he said that was because of Justin's perimeter game, his ability to shoot from the outside. It wasn't because of Justin's rebounding. Justin has made himself into an elite offensive rebounder, and that's where where he hangs his hat now this season. And he is the grit and grind, the glue guy of their front court. He makes it happen for them.
Yeah, it's just fascinating, Justin, Chris, because I'm looking around for different players from the state of Maryland, and I'm like, this kid is from the state of Maryland, and why are you letting them leave the state to go to Houston or whatever? There's something going on with high school recruiting in this state that you need to keep your hometown, crop in one area, just like what Duke in North Carolina does. They keep everybody, who are in the state of North Carolina in North Carolina. I feel like people in Maryland, it's just like, okay, I don't want to go down to College Park or Towson University. It's only 20 minutes from where I live here. It's still basketball. It's still Division I basketball. Yes, you don't play the talent-wise like in the CAA, but the CAA is still good. And if Maryland, they're in the Big Ten.
And that was a problem that a lot of Houston coaches prior to Kelvin Sampson were guilty of. They could not keep the local Houston talent in town. They'd go to Baylor, Texas, anywhere else. But the last 2-3 years, especially once Houston has really started winning and becoming nationally relevant again, the top high school kids are staying home and choosing Houston.
Exactly. Well, Kris, we can find you on Twitter. I found you this morning, on Twitter this morning. So that's your Twitter handle. So talk about the publication. What do you guys do with the Houston Round the Ball? Go ahead.
Houston Round Ball Review's been around since '94. Started out as an NBA draft publication. That's a long time ago. That's paper. That's really the really old ages of the internet. Back when AOL Press and things like that were going around. So yeah, I'm old enough to do all that kind of stuff.
You and me both, Chris.
But I've kind of gotten away from the draft stuff and got more to the local teams, U of H, the Rockets. So NBA, more college now because a lot of people are still focused on NBA. But here in town, Houston is a football town, football state. But I'm trying to get my toe in that door for college basketball in H-Town.
Awesome, Chris.
Exactly. Well, all right, Chris. Thanks for coming on, and we'll try to talk to you down the road, and maybe we'll get you on if Houston gets to the Final Four.
Go Cougs.
Sounds good. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Chris.
Take care.
Thanks, Chris. All right, folks. That's Kris Gardner, who covers the he's, like you said, back in 1994. That's before the internet.
Yeah, it's crazy times, man.
Yeah,
by the way,
I can't remember the day without you.
Yeah, interesting fact, George. When I was playing basketball, my favorite player was the ground round of rebound, Charles Barkley. And when they would say you ski, and I would say that's not my name anymore, they changed my name to Windex because I was always cleaning up the glass. Come on, it's a tough crowd tonight. You guys, seriously? I'm waiting all show for that.
No, I love it. So can I call you Windex?
That was awesome. If that Mr. Clean, man, we're just gonna call you Mr. Clean and call me Stats.
Oh yeah, Stats. I love it,
George. You know what they called me? Guys, when we were playing, I was playing basketball with my brother. They used to call me George Marison because I used to foul out every 5 minutes.
You were a hacker. Let me say this.
Yeah, hack people. Yeah, like good job, awesome. George. I'm like, oh.
George, call me anything you want, but don't ever call me late for dinner.
I won't call you late for dinner. I promise.
I know you won't, buddy, because you'll be there waiting on me. Oh man, it's good stuff.
Well, it is 8:30. Let me try to find. I don't know what happened to Kerry. The voice. The man of Kerry Eggers, who is the dean of Portland sports. I talked to him in Portland, Oregon. I talked to him this afternoon. He knew what time to get on, so I guess he got stuck. We'll get him on another time. And then when Bob Holt, he's having a hard time with his computer. I'll set up something with him tomorrow. And we'll play that, in a future show just to make it up for, lost time. If somebody could log in here before 8:35, that'd be great. But anyway, let's do our picks, pick to collect for this week. Who you want to see on after Sunday? Because we got the Sweet 16 starts Saturday and Sunday, and then the Elite 8 is Monday and Tuesday. Is that correct?
We might be. Yeah, I think we might be off a day or two on that, Herbie, but I'm not sure. But I will tell you.
Saturday, is it Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday?
Maybe Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Something like that.
Let's know. I got it right here.
Listings on
Sweet 16, the 27th and 28th.
Okay. And that's
Saturday, Sunday.
Coming week.
And then the Elite 8 is on the 29th and 30th.
Oh, it's going to be awesome, guys.
All right.
Hey, I hate to say it because I don't like them in football very much, but I'm going with my pick, Roll Tide.
Yeah. Well, I got a polling question on our Twitter page. Last week we did a polling question for the UConn Maryland game, and they picked UConn to win by 56 points. I don't know, Euan, did you have 17 of your friends? Yeah. Because I never had 17 people vote in my life. I'm like, oh my God, I got 17 people. Man. And Nicole's like, despite all his neighbors down in Tampa voting.
Man, Nicole is really beating me up, dude. What the heck? How'd I get in her doghouse, Herbie?
Yeah. All right, get this. Kerry Eggers just logged in. Let's get him on the last 2 minutes before we let him go because, he had a problem with the internet. But here he is.
Kerry.
Hi, Kerry. How you doing?
Good.
Thanks for coming on. I'm glad you got on. I was wondering if you had issues with the internet or something, but thanks for making this some time for us tonight. And let's talk about Oregon State. The state of Oregon has 2 teams in the Sweet 16. I don't know if anybody in the East Coast has anybody in the Sweet 16.
Well, yeah, and the Pac-12 has 4 teams, which is a huge surprise to us out here. We thought the Pac-12 was pretty weak this year. We thought the Big Ten was the team to beat, but UCLA's there and USC's there, and so are the Ducks and Beavers.
Kerry, it's been such an interesting season, and I've really enjoyed. I normally don't stay up and watch Oregon State basketball, to be honest with you, but I've got to tell you, this team has showed just so much grit. The first 2 games of this tournament. What have you seen during the season that maybe that you said to yourself, they could make a run at things? Was there a moment? I mean, they play unselfish, they play great basketball, but what have you seen in terms of the development up until this point from this Beaver team?
Well, I can tell you they were 11-11 quite a ways into the season and looked like they were going to have another kind of mediocre season. They've always been a decent team, but not a really good team. But this was a group, they brought in 4 transfers, and it took them a while to gel together. I think the last 10 games, they've all bought into especially the defensive end. They play really good defense. And, that's been the key to the turnaround. They're not always hitting on all cylinders on the offensive end, but they do have enough 3-point shooting. Jared Lucas he's got a lot of chutzpah behind him, the little sophomore guard, and they got a guy named Maurice Kalou, a 6'9" guy off the bench that has hit a lot of threes for him. And then a big center, Roman Silva, who was 8 for 8 in the game against Tennessee. He's given them big lifts. So their best player is Ethan Thompson, the son of Stevie Thompson, the former Syracuse star, and he's a great player, but he's gotten a lot of help from a lot of different guys.
So, Kerry, you're coming up this weekend against the Loyola Chicago team. It just seems like every year there's this whole story with Loyola and how people think that they're a Cinderella team, but being an 8 seed versus a 12 seed, to me, it's pretty evenly matched. We had talked earlier with some other guests. What are the key numbers that Oregon State's got to be at to secure a victory, especially this weekend against Loyola?
Well, they've won 8 in a row and 19 out of 20. They're the hottest team in the tournament other than Gonzaga. It's going to be they're going to have their hands full of Beavers against them. That Cameron Krutwig, I think is how you pronounce it. That kid's a 6'9" senior but the Beavers have a lot of size. They're one of the biggest teams in the country. Silva's 7'1", Rodriguez is 6'8" and about 255. And if you haven't seen him play, he looks physically like Zion Williamson, and he's pretty good inside. So I think they've got enough strength inside. The key to me is if they can score against Loyola. Only averages the opponents average 55 points a game. So if you're looking for a number, if they can get in the 65 or 70 point range, I think they've got a pretty good chance to win.
Chris?
Yeah. Well, Kerry, I got to ask you. I know you're home in Portland. Yeah, but you used to be a well-known sports writer. Used to travel around the country and all that stuff. What do you think for the NCAA tournament? Do you think they should continue doing it next year, or go back to the old way and have everybody go to different regions and rig up that figure flyer mileage and all that stuff?
Well, I like the old way. I mean, you don't want to have all of the 64 teams in one state. I mean, first of all, the regionals are a lot of fun. If you've ever covered a regionals, I've covered several of them. They're a lot of fun, and there's great basketball played, and it allows more fans around the country to see the game in person. TV drives the industry, it seems like now, but still, the in-person crowds are very important, I think, to the game. So I'm sure it'll go back to the old way once things return, quote, to normal. And I think that's for the better.
Kerry, this Loyola Chicago team has just been, I was watching the first game with my friend, and he's like, "Oh, this is going to be a blowout." I'm like, "This team has been there before," and I don't really know my history in terms of the Beavers, but they just play togetherness. And you mentioned the transfers coming in. Do you really feel like they're gelling now? And has there been kind of one moment where they've come together as a team and maybe overcome some adversity that maybe propelled them or gave them a confidence boost to make it to this point?
For sure, yeah. They lost 98-64 to Arizona at home on January 24th, and I think that was like a call to judgment for these guys. The next game out, Jared Lucas, a little 6'2" guard, started the game, had a big game. They beat Arizona State 80-79. And they've only lost one game since. I think that was the moment where they really put it together. And like I said, more on the defensive end than on the offensive end.
Wow.
Yeah. That's true. Let's see here. I guess it's my turn. Well, Kerry, thank you so much for coming on tonight. I know you're a busy guy, and I like the backdrop. You and I were talking about maybe you should put like Hawaii or something in the backdrop, like somebody I was telling you today on the phone. But that looks really cool. With all your Mentos and all that stuff. Is there one back behind the shelf that you're always going to turn around and go, "I'm so proud of that"?
Well, I've written 7 books, and I hope your viewers will get my 8th. It's on Jerome Kersey, the former Blazer forward who played 17 years in the league, and it'll be coming out this fall. So that'll be joining it next. But the last one I did was on the Jail Blazers. You guys have probably heard that group. Remember that group maybe from the early 2000s that had some really good teams, but also some real renegades on it. So.
Well, Kerry, thanks so much for joining us. Hey, go Beavers.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on, you guys.
Okay, Kerry, take care.
All right, thanks for coming on. All right. So you can find Kerry on Twitter. I was going to get this Twitter hang of Kerry Eggers, and he does have a picture of the Jail Blazers on there. So if you want to go do some reading, we're not having a book club here on Uski and Herbie, so we're just not Oprah.
I missed that team.
Yeah, they
The
had some teams
Trailblazers.
in Portland.
What's that?
Yeah, they had some. They had some good teams in the
Oh yeah,
Portland in the
Kevin
early '90s.
Duckworth, Jerome Kersey. I can't remember anybody else.
It's just too bad, you know. It's just one of those things that just evaporated.
Trexler.
Yeah,
They
Clyde
had
the
Clyde
Glide.
the Glide.
Right.
Yeah. Going after Michael Jordan and the Bulls, and then you had, if you want to go way back, you had Bill Walton with his weird
Oh
beard
yeah,
and his out to here,
and his
you
headband too.
yeah.
Herbie.
My brother Will said to me on the phone the other day, if you want to listen to Bill Walton, it's like you're basically taking like some kind of like acid trip or something, because he just goes off about whatever during the broadcast. I'm like, who gave him a microphone? Yeah. So anyway, thanks for coming on tonight. I want to give you folks if you want to vote right now on our Twitter page, I'd like to see who we'll see who you think is going to be who's going to win the Florida State Michigan Sweet 16 matchup. I'm going to go with the Noles going to the Elite Eight, but Michigan, they still have that injured player, and they're doing a pretty decent job keeping that player from making an impact.
Yeah, I think Florida State. They've their defensive prowess, George, can't be overstated. I mean, they play the best team defense, I believe, of any team in the country, and it has when you can rebound the basketball and limit teams to one shot, George, you're always going to have a chance to win.
In the end, the only way you can get on a good run is if you're running at a clip. And it's about building distance. It's about getting that run to maybe 10, 12 points, where now it's more than a three possession game. You get it past a three possession game, at some point before halftime, and then you just keep up that same energy. It's game over. It's about rebounding the rock offensively. If you don't rebound offensively, there's a defense that's going to love to take the ball away.
Exactly. Well, folks, thanks for joining us. That's George Bashira, who's from Shakedown Thunder. You can go to his publication all about Notre Dame sports. I guess you getting ready for the Frozen Four this weekend, right, bud?
I am geared up and I'm ready to go.
That's
Boston
awesome.
College,
And down in the corner. And then our other broadcast, my partner, Euan McCreevy, who next week will be writing "Let's Go Yanks" on his little thing down there.
I can't give up. I can't let go of the Huskies, man. We made the tournament. I don't know what to tell you guys. Hey, our women are dominating right now, George. Our women are playing good basketball right now, George.
Yeah, and you guys are without Gino because he came down with the COVID.
Right. So we'll see, but we'll overcome. We'll see in the final. We'll see in the Final Four with the ladies. Guys, great job tonight. I am signing off. We love you guys.
Good seeing you, buddies.
I was going to ask you, George, the Final Four of the women. I think it's going to be Maryland, UConn, South Carolina, and I think there's going to be a sleeper team, maybe Louisville.
Nah, I think Maryland's going to win it all.
Yeah, Maryland's just blowing people out. It's like, good Lord. Today they won like 100 to what, 56 over Alabama, and now they're taking on. I think they're playing Texas.
You need to have what's her face, Christie, on again. McGowan.
Yes, I'm going to go try to get her on next week.
We need to bring her on the show next week. I want to talk to her about this women's basketball thing and see what her thoughts are.
Okay, we'll work on that as well. Well, folks, you see that next Uski and Herbie show, but tomorrow night, folks, I got to let you know. Tomorrow night, I got to put it out there. We're gonna have a real special show here at 8 p.m. It's so 8 o'clock tomorrow night. We'll be live on the program here. A special edition of Uski and Herbie. We'll have Jordan Justin Gordon will be joining us from Houston. Yeah, he'll be joining us as well, and my brother Will be filling in tomorrow night for Uski, and we'll see how he does. We have loyal Chicago's broadcaster coming on. Hopefully, we'll have that as well. Then we have Missy Parkton, who is a lady who will be stopping by to talk about the women's tour because they are right now in between seasons. So we're going to get ready for the. She's going to talk about bowling there. Missy, she's a very nice young lady, and we'll talk. Basically, Justin will be joining us at 8:40, and then we'll talk anything else that Will wants to talk about tomorrow, starting at 8 o'clock here, a special edition. So let me pull that up for you folks for tomorrow. There it is. Ooh. Tomorrow night at 8 o'clock, a special edition of Uski and Herbie. So, George, thanks for joining us, my buddy. I appreciate you coming on, and I'm hungry. I'm going to get something for dinner, and I'm going to be watching. I want to watch some Mets Cardinals spring training right now. So that's going to be a good thing on the MLB Network. So, thank you so much for coming on. Huh?
Go Cardinals.
Go Cardinals. Hey, I got to tell you, back in the 80s, the Cardinals and Mets hated each other. We had fights. Because the Mets were so dominant from like.
That's when baseball was baseball.
Oh my God, baseball was great back then. Now it's like, oh my God, you hit somebody in the back and like, oh well. So anyway, that's for another story for another time. Have a great night, everybody. Thanks for joining us. See you tomorrow night at 8 o'clock, and we'll see you next Wednesday at 7:30. Have a great night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.